So, hi everyone. This is our first ever CLPE podcast, which I'm really excited about. And this week I am joined by one of our most precious members of the team, Charlotte Hacking. She's a learning programs leader at CLPE, so she does a lot of the important work with schools, and she has worked on a very special campaign with me recently, which I'm sure you'll all have heard about on our social, CLP Words for the World. So we produced a 2-week-long whole school teaching unit built around the picture book by Oliver Jeffers, Here We Are. And we're going to just discuss why we created that unit, why we felt it was really important at this time to have the unit, the process that Charlotte went through, and just particularly why this book was a brilliant one to use. So Charlotte, do you want to give kind of an idea of, first of all, why this unit was so important in the current climate?
So I think at the minute schools are facing an absolutely unprecedented situation. They've had a lot of gap in teaching and learning in school. Some children have been in school for the whole of lockdown, but many children have been away from school for up to 6 months. So what we think is a really important thing is making sure that a transition back to school now is well supported by a curriculum that really helps children get back into learning, but that allows them to come together to have a really good transition experience back from home to school. Many teachers won't have said goodbye formally to the group that they were with before the summer, and that aspect of community is going to be really important going back. The other thing is there's a lot of pressure being put onto schools at the minute with this notion of catch-up. There's a lot of documentation flying at schools at the minute, not just about guidance in dealing with the coronavirus, but also new government documents related to phonics screening check, related to development matters changing, relating to testing arrangements. And what we wanted was schools to have a real couple of weeks where they could just focus on good quality learning that was focused on high quality literature, getting children back together, talking together, reading together, learning together in creative ways that support their return to school. What we also wanted to make sure was that the unit that we produced made sure that there were quality learning experiences, that children were really focused on learning about language and vocabulary in the context of this high quality book, that there were also opportunities for your early readers to work on things like phonics, which are incredibly important at the moment, and that we gave enough stretch to our older readers to really explore and experiment with expressive writing that they could write for themselves independently based on experiences they've had over the last 6 months, but that really stretch them to work at that greater depth, responding to a text at a deeper level and using that text to stimulate their own writing in really purposeful contexts.
Yeah, and I think it's important as well to talk about how it was a whole school unit and to kind of create that unity and togetherness and kind of bring everyone together. And it's across like a 2-week period. So do you want to talk about kind of the things that children will be covering in that unit and how you've kind of broken it down across the different key stages?
So across the whole unit, the first couple of days are all about coming back together. What it was like for children who were still in school, what it was like for children at home, lots of opportunities for children to talk, to listen, to write about experiences they've had, but in the context of Here We Are, which gives that really supportive context to say, here we are now, we're back here together, where are we, what have we been doing, how have we come back together? And then as the unit is scaffolded, we've tried to make sure that there are experiences that are reflective across every one of those key stages. So there's outdoor learning opportunities, not just in the early years foundation stage and key stage 1 sections, which are really important for children's development at that stage, but also for the older children as well. We know that outdoor learning is a really important thing for children of all ages, particularly after lockdown, where children are going to have been inside for lots of the time. Getting back to nature, getting back to that environment where they can be free, but also be inspired by the natural world around them is really important as well. The book offers lots of opportunities for links with poetry. So there's poetry across from early years to year 6, for songwriting, and then to focus children on that move into, okay, here we are now, and now where are we going? So to start to think about their role in the world and to start to know that they have a place in society and that they have a role in society as well moving forward, simply in the early years in year 1, 2, in being kind to everybody else around them and looking after the world around them. And then as we move into key stage 2, it's looking at those opportunities to have a voice in the world as well and to speak about issues that are important to them. And again, that's working those older children towards those greater depth objectives of speaking for a listener, of writing for a reader, and knowing that writing gives them a voice to communicate issues that are important to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, it's important to talk about kind of how the schools are planning their curriculum when they return, and how you focused around what's expected of the curriculum, and how that kind of slots in.
I think schools will be approaching this in different ways, and Ofsted have had a focus on curriculum for the last couple of years now, and what we want to make sure that we're exemplifying in this unit is that you keep that curriculum as broad and rich as possible. We know that we're going to want to work on the basics, the literacy, the numeracy, but that has to be done within the context of a broad, rich curriculum. So lots of the opportunities that we've planned for in this 2-week sequence have got really strong links to wider subjects like science, like geography, like history, so that children have got contextualized learning, and they can focus on those key literacy skills whilst broadening their knowledge of the world in other curriculum subjects as well, so that they don't miss out on any of the creative subjects that give them that richer, more rounded education. There's lots of links, obviously, with this being a high quality picture book, with art as well, and we want to make sure as well that that's not one of the opportunities that gets lost in that curriculum narrowing. We want to make sure that children have opportunities for drawing. We know from our Power of Pictures research what a vital role that plays in children building up their imagination and ideas for writing, and to help them make sense of experiences before they might vocalise that, or before they might put that in writing as well.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to all the kind of work that we've already been receiving, actually. Obviously, we're leading up to the 24th for our CLPE Words for the World to celebrate. But we've had so much lovely work come in already on our social media, and I think people are really engaged. The children seem to be really enjoying everything, which I guess just makes that kind of everything seem like really worthwhile when you kind of see the results that they're having.
I think one of the things that I've been most grateful about seeing and most excited to see, I think, is people getting out into the outdoors. We worry sometimes that we're making things too open, and we want to look for obviously the core literacy links in it, but all of those creative experiences, all of those freer experiences, like one of the Key Stage 2 units, for example, that's getting a lot of traction on the messaging that's coming through on Twitter, is the activity where they go out and they look at the sky and they use that time to just stop and think and stare. And we mustn't underestimate how important those activities are in giving children thinking space that will then translate into their writing, their talk later on.
Definitely, it allows them to kind of open up and be a bit more creative. I think even for myself as an adult, I kind of need that mental space as well. So I guess it's just all part of their well-being, which I think has played a big part in what you've produced as well, actually.
Absolutely, child well-being, mental health. We haven't wanted to make an overt issue to that, because I think it's going to be really careful. You're going to have to do really careful navigating of those conversations with children, particularly your young children. There may be some children who don't want to share things. There may be some children who really do want to explore and share things. What we've made is a unit that really does focus on having empathy with each other, listening to each other, understanding each other, and working together as a community, so that children feel secure in the environment back at school. They feel secure about the world around them in a very uncertain time still, because as we're returning to school, we're still living in that degree of uncertainty, and teachers will be key people for children to work with in talking about anxieties and making sense of things for more than the next 2 weeks of this unit.
I think as well that kind of brings us back around to the book really nicely, is that it's kind of that's the kind of messaging within the book, and that's how it's kind of tied in really well. And I guess one of the reasons that you chose it, was it kind of an easy decision to choose that book? Did you kind of have an idea of what you had in your head that you wanted to produce and then go for the book, or did you kind of look at the book and think we can do something with this?
So I think our decision on this unit was really focused and based on the work that we've done with Power of Pictures over the last 6 years, where we take one really good high quality picture book that has that depth and has that scope to work with children of all ages, from the early years right up to year 6. And Oliver Jeffers is one of the most prominent and one of the most high quality children's writers at the minute. So it made sense to look for an artist that we knew could have that depth and range, but for the right book for this time. And I think the artist Oliver and the book Here We Are were the perfect marriage of the kind of book that we would look for, that would offer us what we needed for early years up to year 6.
Yeah, and I think that brings us nicely into Oliver joining us very shortly as well. So we're actually very excited that he's agreed to have a chat with us today. So not that he needs much introduction, but from his very first book, How to Catch a Star, which is one of my toddler's favourites as well, actually. He's won and been shortlisted for the Kate Greenaway, the Irish Book Awards, and the Bologna, am I saying that right? Book Awards.
Bologna Children's Book Prize.
There you go. I knew you had my back. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome Oliver Jeffers to have a chat with us a little bit more in depth about the book and all of his processes in his creative writing. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate you making some time. Obviously, we've had such an engaging, excited response that you're involved in this campaign from all of the schools that have been participating. We've had over 13,500 downloads of the unit, which is based around your book. So yeah, everyone's really excited. So
incredible.
It's great to have you join us and obviously get some juicy info from you, hopefully.
My pleasure.
Oliver, your original degree was in illustration and visual communication. We use a lot of your work at the CLPE because your picture books have that innate quality to combine words and pictures in a really sophisticated way that can appeal to kids of all ages. I want to give a particular shout out to one of my favourite series is the Hueys, and I think they don't get as much recognition as they often should do. This is the kind of absolute visual perfection that has the simplicity to get some really complex messages out in a really simple way. I think with the Hueys, it's like, it should all be this simple. Let's take the backgrounds away. Let's focus on a really simple character. But there's really sophisticated concepts. I think one of my favourite ever spreads is this one, which you could have a whole 20-minute discussion on the mathematical concepts that are involved in this spread. I want to talk to you really about what it is about the picture book medium that specifically appeals to you, what it offers you as an artist, and what you think it offers to your readers of all ages.
Well, I think you just hit on it there by suggesting the economy of that Huey spread, and it's for me. I want to try and get to the heart of the notion of what I'm trying to say, and often when you spell something out, you are so specific to just your particular view of it rather than how anybody else might specifically feel about that. And so I've often thought that the less you can say, the more powerful it can be. And I'm at an advantage because I both write and illustrate the books. So if I can show something, then I'll try and do that as much as possible. But it's absolutely right, stripping everything back, stripping everything away, so you're just left with the absolutely core details. And therein, there's less guff, there's less sort of clutter or white noise to contaminate the message.
Yeah, people can interpret in their own way then, can't they?
Yeah. But it's funny that one of the favorite characters of mine in any of the books is the penguin from Lost and Found. But if you look at him closely, he doesn't actually do anything or say anything. He's a blank canvas upon which everybody else projects how they wish him to be, and therefore how he is in somebody else's imagination is much better than anything I could have come up with specifically for them. So it's just that allowing somebody the room to get into the story and make it theirs. But I think books, because of their economy and the fact that you take them at your own speed, unlike a play or a film, which the director is bringing you through a journey using multiple senses, but it's a very controlled journey. Whereas in a book, it's up to you how quickly or how slowly you turn the pages, and you can go back and you can start in the middle and work backwards. You can go whatever way you want. So there's an element of control that you, the reader, have, that's just absent in other forms of media.
I think with you as well, it's your balance of simplicity but such a depth of story, and throughout your work your ability to really tell us an important story really shines through. Your paintings, your art often combine words and images, and even where there are no words, the art that you've got is a narrative. I think, you know, you just talked about the penguin there, and I think one of my favorite ever spreads, and you have to excuse me because this is a spread that's guaranteed to make my eyes well every time I look at it, is this one. I just think, if nothing else in the book, this tells the whole story by the end of it. And you also described your picture book with Sam Winston, A Child of Books, as a shared ode to literature and imagination. And I just wondered, how important has the power of story been to you throughout your life and your career? And what do you think is the power of storytelling?
Well, I think storytelling is massively powerful. I think that after the basic needs of survival, food, water, shelter, I think storytelling is up there, because it's the only way in which humanity has ever made sense of a world that would just otherwise be chaotic and random and cold. And storytelling is tied to identity. It's where you've come from and it's where you're going. It's why you're doing anything. And yes, storytelling can often seem frivolous and, not, I always remember being told, like, get a proper job, but I think it's absolutely massively important, because it's our moral compass, it's our guide, it's our entertainment, it's our sense of identity. And
was story important to you growing up as well? Did you grow up in a house of stories, books?
Yes, absolutely. Stories. Growing up in Belfast, everybody's a storyteller. So as much of the stories were coming from people around me, as opposed to oral storytelling, rather than just coming from books or from the television. But yes, I think I grew up with just a sense of how to tell a story. The basic premises that are needed for that, like. Timing is everything, and just also I think how many people forget the basic idea that a good story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you look back at any book that's left you unsatisfied, or any film that's left you unsatisfied, you'll realize that one of those things didn't stand up.
Yeah, I think you can really pick that up in the way that you plan your stories. They've got the perfect beat. Every page turn is so perfectly planned to lead the narrative on. Again, throughout the myriad of picture books that you've published, there's a real curiosity about the world imbued in every single one of them. And I don't know if this is something you plan, but as a reader, they really offer you a way of making sense of yourself, of the world around you. And that complex simplicity, I think, is all I can describe it as of your illustration. I know Quentin Blake said you managed to be naive and sophisticated at the same time, I think. But that really subtle but really satisfying storytelling that you manage enables the reader to really engage with some quite complex themes, like connection, like friendship, like finding yourself, like love and loss and humanity. I think some of the key moments, we talked about that spread with the penguin and the boy at the end, but it's as much as said in those final spreads, even beyond the story finishing, in How to Catch a Star. Or I could talk all day about this book. This is so beautiful, but what really gets me about this one is the storytelling before the story even begins in these end papers. The end papers are so perfectly well planned out. So I was just thinking, what is it that you consider when you approach each text, and what do you hope for the books and the readers they reach when they're published?
Well, when I'm at the very early stages of seeing what story that is floating around in my sketchbooks or in my head, which one is going to be the next one that's going to become a book, I'm primarily thinking of myself as an audience, and what is it that I feel right now, what is the heart and soul of this particular story, and then I just try and explode that a little bit, see what's in that, and really it's about trying to entertain myself, and it's only really when I know that I'm on that right trajectory can I give my audience a lot of credit and say, I think you two can figure this out. I think you can come with me on this, because I've left enough breadcrumbs to follow the trail. So it's maybe not the answer that you were expecting, but I don't second guess my audience too much, because it works for me in that if I'm just as honest and authentic as possible, people come with me and they get more from it than if I had sat down and tried to think of a strategy that spelled out all these different pieces for their benefit.
I was going to ask as well, when you have a concept or an idea for a book, do you start with the visual elements in your mind first, or is it the writing that kind of forms initially? Like, what's the kind of process?
It changes each time. Sometimes it starts with a visual. The Incredible Book-Eating Boy came from just one simple drawing, before I'd even really fleshed through the idea. The Lost and Found was a little bit of both. I had the notion, the feeling of a story, and I was both trying to work it out, what it looked like and what it sounded like at the same time. And then there's ones like Here We Are, where it was written almost in its entirety before I even thought about what images would go with it. So it's different every time. I don't have a set formula.
I do think the images with Here We Are just so perfect, and the way it kind of takes you through the whole world, I guess. And it's definitely like one of my toddler's favourite new books as well. I was saying earlier, How to Catch a Star was one of his first favourite books, because star was actually the first shape that he learned. So every page turn, it was like, "Mommy, star," and I was like, "Yes, another star." And then I think with Here We Are, I think even for me as an adult, like, it's so, like, it just grabs you because there's just so much going on, but there's something relatable to every page. And I think you can kind of experience something with each page.
I joke it's technically a science book. It's my first non-fiction book. There's nothing in it that's not true.
And I think just so that our viewers and our listeners are aware, I must give out a shout out to this book as well. This is fascinating, because to get the insights that we get in here of your creative process, you can really see how that marriage of visual and text works. And even across the boys' stories, there's a real mix of, sometimes you start quite heavily visual and it moves into the writing. Sometimes it starts more writing and moves in. So it's really fascinating. If you want to see any more about all of this process, I would definitely recommend this one. So Lost and Found and Here We Are have both been made into films. You talked a little bit about film earlier, but I just wondered how you felt about the ways in which these really much loved books that have been accepted already by readers have been interpreted into that new medium.
Well, they've been interpreted by the same people. So Philip Hunt, who's the director of both, and Sue Goff, who was a producer of both with Studio AKA. And the first one, there were very different experiences, I think just because of the scale of the project in either one. But ultimately, the way in which they were approached was the same. We agreed fairly early on in the process with Lost and Found that there's no point in sticking rigidly to the rules of the book, of just having the book be slightly longer and moving. And so it was an adaptation rather than just a replication. And Philip and I went off in tangents, and I went through my process. I shared all my sketchbooks. He picked up on little things, and then he brought other aspects to it, and ultimately made it his own. And then so that was the same way in which we approached Lost and Found. Here We Are. But as the scale was so much bigger, and Lost and Found was only ever to be initially designed for a UK audience, because it was Channel 4 who were the main producer on that. Because it was Apple TV and they were producing content that was going to need to be translated into multiple languages and would work in countless territories, the process was a little more structured, and there was a lot more people involved, but ultimately it was the same. It was, we agreed that there's a kernel at the heart of the story. What's another way to tell it when you don't have the simple format of a page turn, and you need to engage a story from beginning through the middle to the end. And in the book, Here We Are, there's no actual story. So for the film adaptation, we kind of had to make one up. So it was very enjoyable, and there's a huge amount of work goes into projects of that ilk, and an absolutely huge amount of people that play their part.
It must have been very satisfying going to the premiere of that and seeing, because the film of Here We Are particularly it veers quite away, but like you say, still has that essence of the book.
Yeah. The premiere for that was in our living room when we were in lockdown, because it was one of many things that was cancelled with the global pandemic. So my wife suggested that we all put on tuxedos and put a red carpet down, which I think was for a yoga mat. We just made it feel a little special.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea. Make an evening of it, why not?
So as we said before, your books explore that kind of curiosity about the world and that awakening and how we can care for it ourselves and each other, especially now in Here We Are and in your forthcoming book, What We'll Build. But over the more recent work you've done, I was just going to highlight some examples. I think The Incredible Book Eating Boy was a really interesting one for me, because that you published that sort of just as the kind of information revolution was exploding before. I think it was before Apple launched the iPhone, but that idea that we were going to get consumed with knowledge, and that's very much at the heart of Book Eating Boy. And The Great Paper Caper as well has obviously got a sense of understanding about the world and almost veering into, you know, what we have to do moving forward. And I just also was looking at your adult work. I was lucky enough to go and see the Observations on Modern Life, which was just absolutely stunning. And you seem to be more openly moving into kind of a social commentary. I don't know if it's activism, but definitely social commentary. And I wondered what it is that's inspired your more recent work, and whether having children has changed how you're seeing the world.
Yeah, I think having children definitely had an impact on that. But I can't, because our first son was born in 2015, and then we were grappling with the responsibility of what it is to be a parent, and that you're not thinking about yourself first. And I don't mean that in a selfish way, but that was all happening in late 2015 into 2016. And I live in Brooklyn, and I'm back in Belfast an awful lot. And so the two worlds in which I inhabit were just sort of being so consumed by fear and by xenophobia at those points, with like the Brexit rumblings, the early stages of that, and wanting to go back to sort of this idea of a Britain that never really existed, but that was very exclusive of anybody who didn't fit that idea. And again, here in the USA, where there was, the dog whistles of racism being called and building a wall to keep everybody out. And so it all just suddenly felt much more urgent. And I've always thought the things that I've thought, but in social media, I'd never thought it was like, well, it's not really my place. But having kids, I suddenly flipped on that and just said, well, if I'm not going to speak up about these things, then who will? And I want to be able to look my kids in the eye at some point in the future and say that I tried to say the right thing and do the right thing and lead by example. And I didn't realize how many people I was going to be giving voice to. And so that has started to move more into the fine art aspect of what I do. And it's I think for me, early in my career, my picture books were one strand of what I did, and the fine art was another strand. And really, ever since leaving college, they've been getting closer and closer together and overlapping in myriad ways.
And the final shout out I was going to give for our adult audience is this book, which is a stunning reflection of your career in both fine art and in picture books as well. And I think I got this when I went to the exhibition, but your fine art, as you said, there's some real striking commentary. I think this was one of the pieces that struck me most in the exhibition.
Yeah, it's my Northern Irish passport, and it was that vote in Brexit that people forgot that Northern Ireland was actually a part of Britain. And what was so interesting was that that's the point of that piece, and there was a reviewer came and picked that piece out. I can't remember the magazine now, but a London-based magazine, and they got it wrong, and they thought it was about the color of the passport. And I was like, see, even
no.
Notice this. It felt very frustrating.
So I just wondered if you'd managed to see on social media or anywhere any of the work that's come from the schools engaging with the CLPE unit on Here We Are. And
I've been trying to take a peek every so often, and it feels overwhelming. It's like the work that is coming out is brilliant, and it makes sense because it is a book about everything, I suppose, in so many ways. So you can tap in and go any direction you want. And just to be able to provide the framework for that to happen is I'm very honored and humbled by it. But it's really exciting just to see how many kids are getting so involved and the really beautiful and fantastic work that's coming out of it.
And yeah, we've had so much engagement, haven't we? We've literally, like, every day we see so much work coming through, and it does kind of, like, you can't stop beaming, because it's really, like, kind of, you can see that it's something that's really come from close, like, to their heart, and they've really connected with it. So it is actually so lovely every time you go online and you actually see so much work coming through. Yeah, it's a nice feeling.
And obviously we know why we chose the book for the unit, but what is it that you think the book can offer children now, particularly? You know, this is the book was published a while ago, but now it's become more important for these children.
Well, you know, I think there's a couple of key points in the book, but I think the two that are probably lend themselves most to this are the idea of equality and inclusion, and that spread.
That one there?
Yeah,
from many
my favourite page.
Colors. Don't be fooled, we're all people, but also the notion that the earth is the only place where people live. The two greatest threats to humanity right now, don't care where you live. They don't need a passport, and climate change and germs, really. And, you know, whenever you leave Earth, and any astronaut who's been far enough away from Earth and sees it as a single system realizes just how single of a system it actually is. You can't see borders of space. And whenever you look at just the fragility of Earth hanging in space there, you realize just, you know, that's it. That's all we've got. I think somebody worked out that there's only 4% of the surface of our planet that is habitable to human life. And in there squeezed is everybody doing everything.
It sounds so minute, doesn't it, when you say it like that?
And obviously what we'll build leads on really well from that, and that launches on the 5th of October. We've been lucky enough to have a look at it, but our readers won't have yet. So could you tell us a bit more about that book, how it came about after Here We Are, and what we can expect from it?
Well, it's a book for my daughter, and it's having gone through all of the parenting mind shifts of how do you deal with this whole other human being, explain everything to them. It was more about the potential into the future of any loving relationship. And so it's what any two people who love each other, how they plan for the future. And so it's me and my daughter, and we're just discussing the things that we are going to do. And it looks at the hopeful and joyful and fun times, but it also takes into consideration that there will be dark days ahead, and how we navigate those together.
And I think that's really important. I think, you know, children now are still in a period of uncertainty, not just with this, but like you say, climate change and everything else. And I think it's really important that books like that are there to help them to navigate that in a really supportive structure and open up those conversations. So after this, what can we expect from you? Have you got any more picture books in production, or what's next from you?
After this, we took a year off to travel whenever all of this happened, and we're sort of in the process of basing ourselves more in Belfast now, but we don't have anywhere to live in any studio, so it's like life problems that we got to deal with. And I'm hoping to do a little bit more work with the United Nations and with TED on raising awareness about climate change with some fine art projects. And I do have another book that I'm going to be working on over the next while, but way too early to say anything about that.
We did actually see your TED. Yeah, we did actually see and share your TED with everyone, didn't we? I really enjoyed watching the TED talk, actually, and I love like the visuals of it. Again, obviously illustration is such a big part of what you do, that it had to be visually appealing like that. Also, I just wanted to thank you as well. Obviously, we've been talking about your book and how we've used it for the unit, for your own contribution, your own words for the world, which was obviously a very simple little postcard, think we, not me. Why did you choose that messaging for your kind of words for the world?
I chose that because I think one of the greatest obstacles that civilization faces is apathy and selfishness. Because I think the world is filled with too many people trying to see what they can get away with, and thinking that the rules don't necessarily apply to them if they don't get caught. And you know, we've been, ever since World War II, where we've been celebrating the life of individualism and how you are important. That's great and wonderful, but the consequences of that are that people think of themselves as separate from everything else, and forget that they're connected to a community and to a society and to a culture and to all cultures, and that every individual's actions have consequences. And so we have to start thinking collectively, and remembering that other people exist if we're going to get through any of these messes that we're currently in.
Yeah, and I do think it was just such a perfect message, and very what we wanted from people, I guess, in terms of unity, togetherness. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Obviously, we're looking forward to everyone sharing their CLPE Words for the World on the 24th, which Oliver will be sharing his postcard online as well. And we've also got a nice surprise that we actually haven't announced yet on social media. So this is the kind of the first announcement, is that we've got a huge, I think it's like 70-foot hoarding in King's Cross Granary Square, which is actually going to feature Oliver's work and the work of the children at King's Cross Academy as well, along with some of the other authors. So we can't wait for that. So that will be a brilliant place to come and visit over the next few months once that's up. We're hoping to get that for early October. So the campaign has kind of grown throughout this past sort of month into something much bigger and better than we'd hoped for. So, and obviously that's down to your brilliant book.
Oh, well, I'm glad to play my part.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Oliver. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you, and a real pleasure to hear your insights on your work as well.
Thanks, guys. Glad I could
we look forward to seeing you when you're here, hopefully, for the launch of King's Cross.
Okay, bye-bye, guys.
Thanks.
Bye. So that was such a pleasure to have Oliver join us for our first ever podcast. Obviously, we'll have more exciting guests coming up in the next few episodes. Just a reminder then for everybody, obviously we've been reiterating the message of CLPE Words for the World over and over. So on Thursday the 24th of September, we want everyone to share their words for the world. It can be, you can interpret it however you like Oliver said earlier. He kind of leaves it up to the interpretation of the reader, and that's what we want you to do. If you want to write about something that's a little left, or however you want to share your words for the world, you can share it as a song, a video. We just want you to make sure you use this hashtag CLPE Words for the World, and obviously follow us on social media as well. So Twitter at CLPE1, and then our Instagram's clpe.org.uk as well, and our Facebook page, Centre for Literacy in Primary Education. I don't know why that's such a tongue twister. And also you can check out our course brochure. We are still running courses at the moment. We have sold out of our flagship Power of Reading, but we do have a waiting list for those that's still interested in booking for that. And obviously,
please do keep an eye on the CLP social media, because over the next few weeks we will be launching our new online program, so that you can engage in virtual learning CPD opportunities with the team here at CLP as well.
Yeah, and you can also keep up to date through our newsletter as well if you sign up on our website. So that you can't miss us. And we hope to see you the next time.